Hello guys and welcome to this video. Now today I wanted to update you on my progress so far with my Seiko mod project, and here it is. So this is a Seiko 5 Sport which started out looking like this, and here it is today. Now I've learned a lot through doing these modifications, and it's been great fun over the last few weeks. It's worth pointing out as well that I had zero experience of this before, and that this has sort of been a challenge I've set myself over the last few weeks now during the coronavirus sort of lockdown, and I couldn't be happier with how it's come out. So in this video, I'm going to be going through the changes I've made. I'm going to go through the mods I used, where I got them, how much this whole project has cost me, and what else I'm planning to do actually, because I've understood that the modding thing is only a process really. You never get to the final outcome. There's always something else you can improve on, and it's been an experience. So join me now for a quick tour of this watch, and you'll learn all about it. So I'm going to go through all the mods now. The first one was the strap. This is a Hirsch Osiris strap in leather. It's brown, sort of nubuck leather, the suede kind of effect. I like the way it's already worn a little bit, even though I've only been wearing it for about 2 weeks or so. It's a really nice quality strap. Hirsch makes some fantastic products. Some really high-end stuff, nice clear and shiny buckle as well. Yeah, and also the lengths are good. These tend to be a bit longer than regular size straps that you might get from the manufacturer. So I'm very pleased with it. I also think the color matches the dial and general style of the watch really well as well, giving it that more sort of vintage theme. Apart from the strap, let's move on to the case actually, because this is a standard Seiko 5 case. However, I did do one thing, and that is I polished the lugs on this. While I had the case on its own, I noticed a few little scratches, which I will have done taking off bezels and things like that. I decided just to polish the whole case, including these lugs, which were brushed before, and I think they look actually a lot better like this. I think it just makes the watch a whole lot brighter generally and makes it stand out, a little more shiny, but I do really like this look. I think it looks really quite classy and a bit more refined almost than the brushed sort of Thule style that it comes as standard. The next mod was the double dome sapphire crystal. We've got a sort of more of a bubble kind of shape on the top now because of that dome. It does still have the beveled edge. We need that because we've got the flat insert here. It's still very legible even at quite extreme angles, and I love how it plays with the light, especially that blue AR coating. Now, about the reflections actually, I did notice that this crystal reflects actually a lot more than the flat Hardlex crystal used to. I'm not sure if that's just the shape of the crystal that sort of has that effect as well, or maybe the quality of the AR coating. Either way, I may actually revert back to a flat crystal, still sapphire, but a flat one, just because I think it might take away from that nice sunburst dial a little bit with all of this reflection and light dancing around, especially with the blue as well. So I'm going to have a go at putting a flat crystal in here, because it'll still work with my bezel and everything. I think it might be a nice little test. So that crystal and most of the other mods actually are from Namoki. The crystal cost me $42, and I'll be telling you prices of all this stuff together at the end as well. Namoki have been great. They've got some great deals on shipping during coronavirus. So you can get your stuff delivered via DHL really fast, and they've got good prices for things as well. So I really recommend these guys. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but they have sorted out a few problems for me really quickly. So yeah, have a look at Namoki for Seiko mods. Now, moving on, after I fitted the sapphire, polished the lugs, I decided to tackle the bezel. Now, if you watched my review of the standard watch, one of the things I was a bit surprised at was the shape of the bezel. I thought it made the watch look a little bit smaller than it actually was. So I also much prefer generally the coin edge bezel, because it does match up with the crown, the standard crown, a lot better. It looks more refined, it looks just better, in my opinion. Now this is the Namoki polished steel coin edge bezel. This one was $39, and I'm really happy with the quality of it. It fits super nice, it turns, it's quite tight to begin with actually, but it's got a really nice bezel action. And some of you may already have noticed that I have actually done the 60 click Bezel Mod, which I've posted a video about. All you need to do is when you are installing your bezel is to bend down one of the springs that causes the clicks or the ratcheting, and that actually means that you get half the amount of clicks. And for a bezel like this, and actually it's kind of a Tudor style bezel itself with that coin edge, I thought I'd go for the 60 click, and I just prefer it. I think it sounds great, feels great, and puts a lot of much more expensive watches to shame now just with that bezel action. I thought that was great. So that was mod number 4, I think already, or in 5 actually if you count the spring thing too. Now finally it's the insert. Now the insert, I had a bit of an experience with inserts, because originally I wanted to make a countdown bezeled watch, which is actually really hard to find. Likewise, the bezel inserts are hard to find, and the only one that I thought would fit the bill for what I was planning on doing was from Namoki's. I ended up breaking that insert, and actually on reflection the insert itself wasn't the best design, not the kind of design I'm looking for. I'm now in the process of designing my own insert and hopefully getting it manufactured here in Dubai. So I'm gonna leave that there for now for the countdown thing, but in the meantime I still wanted to wear the watch, and I wanted to get a nice sort of secondary insert that I could use, and I noticed this one on Namoki, which I thought was probably the nicest, simplest, kind of most aesthetically pleasing, well-designed steel bezel insert that they did. And actually Namoki don't do many flat inserts, and I was keen for a flat insert to sort of accentuate that bubble there. And also this Sapphire doesn't actually fit very well with sloped inserts. You still get a little sharp edge on a sloped insert there. I'm not sure if that's the case for all double dome Sapphires with a beveled edge, but it certainly is for the ones that Namoki sell. So it had to be flat, it had to be simple, and what I was trying to do here is not make a Rolex, not make a copy of another watch. If anything, this is probably the closest design I can think of this being to is a Tudor black base steel, even though this is a 12-hour kind of marked bezel. Now this bezel, if you're not sure why you would use this, there's kind of 2 reasons really. Firstly, if you just leave it alone, it will give you the hours as well, because mostly Seiko dials don't have numerals, so it adds numerals to your dial. But the real reason is this allows you to set a second time zone. For example, right now in Dubai, it's just before 8:30, and I'm going to set this to also show the UK time. Now the UK is 3 hours behind us, so I'm going to set this red triangle to 3 o'clock on the dial, about there. So now if we look on the outer edge, we can tell that in the UK it is about 5:30. So it's a really quick way of actually tracking two time zones simultaneously. The downside is that it's only 12 hours, and usually a GMT watch would be 24. But then again, I've seen people put those 24 bezels on these watches, and it makes no sense because there's no 24-hour hand. And actually, I find this quite quick and easy to tell, because I'd say most people use 12-hour time in their day-to-day life. They don't tend to use 24-hour time very often. So I think it's simple, it's easy, it's actually useful. So I'm very happy with this bezel insert. So, like I said, you can also just have it as the markers, which actually between the bezel insert and the chapter ring, you don't even really need the dial here to be able to tell the time anymore. So in essence, you could make a completely sterile dowel watch with this kind of bezel and it would work. So those are my thoughts on the mods in total. Now, I didn't mention how much the steel insert cost actually. That was also $31 from Namoki. So the full total, including $190 for the watch itself to begin with, is $333 for this build. Now, in my opinion, that is a great price for what you're getting. You're getting a double dome sapphire. You're getting a very functional and very pleasant to use bezel. You're getting quite a unique design. You're getting good quality materials like this strap from Hirsch. By the way, don't forget you've still got the original bezel and insert and strap and crystal. So you've got a bunch of parts there you can actually use on a different watch as well. So for $333, I think that is pretty much a steal really, and it certainly puts a lot of my more expensive watches to shame. Now I thought I'd show you a quick wrist shot. Now if you've followed my channel, you will have seen me do a wrist shot of the original bezeled watch. And in that one, I was sort of complaining a little bit about the shape of the bezel. I think this one fits me now a lot better. It feels much higher quality generally, especially the parts that you touch, like the bezel, where you brush your hand over the crystal. It just feels nice. Of course, the strap is good, but the strap is good on any watch. It's the head of the watch now, I think, looks a lot more fancy than it used to, and also much more appealing. Now, there are a couple things that I'm thinking of doing differently and continuing to improve this. Now, firstly is the bezel itself. I like this bezel, but I would like the ability to time things. So I would look to still make that countdown bezel. And as I said, I'm working on a design currently, which I'll share some videos about if it's successful. And that's gonna be a custom bezel insert with that countdown feature, and that's going to be in a slightly different color as well. So that's one thing. I also thought if I do keep this bezel, notice the little red triangle there. On a Sunday, it kind of balances on the dial because the Sunday day is red. But I thought to add actually a red seconds hand. I think that'll just make it pop and tie it together really neat and professionally. So that is something that I would consider doing. And finally, I would like to have a go at trying one of the Jubilee bracelets. I've never worn one before, but I do love bracelets, and this is actually the first strap I'm on a watch of this type I'm wearing. But one thing I'm kind of funny about is having a dive watch with a leather strap. Now, for that reason, this is more of a kind of GMT style watch. So yeah, it makes sense. I'm giving myself a pass here, and the countdown bezel is not really for diving either. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of sticking to my rules there. So other things I wanted to mention in this video was what I have learned through this process. I have learned a significant amount about watchmaking, even though I haven't actually messed with the movement itself. I've made plenty of mistakes, but because the watch is cheap, and a couple of the watches I'm working on are also really cheap, it is not something that I'm particularly worried about. If I do break something, it's not the end of the world, because yes, you can replace it and just put it down to learning. And I'm really surprised actually how much I've enjoyed this, and I can't really believe that I haven't given it a go earlier. As a watch enthusiast, I think everybody should try and modify a Seiko, because since I've been messing with this watch, this has not come off my wrist. And I've got some nicer watches in my collection. You'll see a collection video on my channel. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, I think, and the main reason is that I made it to some extent. I spent those hours polishing those lugs. I have taken the crystal in and out of this thing a bunch of times. I know exactly how to fit the bezel on this watch. I know exactly how to pop the movement out now. So I feel somewhat of a connection with this, personally, a lot more than some of my more expensive, fancier watches. And I think with the recent upgrades, this can go toe to toe with even a Christopher Ward watch or something Swiss made, because to me anyway, it has that sort of character and that sort of, it's like a, I don't know, a pet almost, that you nurture and you develop and you improve and you train and whatever. Perhaps it's a bad analogy, but to me, it's definitely a worthwhile experience, and I think every watch enthusiast needs to do this. Also, the amount of parts available from vendors who are generally helpful, the prices aren't too bad. I mean, I made this entire watch for $330. You can't really buy a watch to this specification for $330, generally. I mean, you can buy some nice designs, but they're not going to be your design, and they're not going to be to your specification. That's one thing I've noticed is, without spending a huge amount of money, you always have to make some compromise, where I felt I've actually made very little compromise in this build. And that's something that I've really enjoyed. So I'm going to be continuing making these Seiko mods. I've actually got 2 further mods lined up, which I will show in some detail of me building it, sort of teaching you a few things, and seeing what I've learned along the way. You know, I've got a funny method of getting the crystals out now, taking bezels off, you know, polishing lugs, polishing crowns as well. So that's coming soon. And also I'm super excited about potentially making my own parts, like my own bezel inserts and stuff, with the help of a friend here in Dubai who's got a metal 3D printer. So I'm going to be sharing all this on the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think of my first mod, and I'll see you next time.